So it's easy to get excited when we manifest something and we go, ooh, ooh, I've thought about that and I manifested that. Spirit responded to my wishes. What about when we get guided to let go of something? When we feel within ourselves that Spirit is talking to us and saying, hey, you need to not do that pattern or that habit today. You've got to change it all up. And, what do you do? And I had one just this morning. I've been taking the stairs up and down where I am. And, that was like, this will be good and healthy for me. And I got to the stairs right by the elevator, and it was very clear. It's like, take the elevator. And I'm like, I'm just getting good at these 4 flights. and so I was like, okay. And so I'm going down the elevator. There's no one in the elevator. We stop at there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4. So on the first floor, and a couple gets in. And I'm not even sure how we even got on the conversation, but all of a sudden she was just like, oh, divine feminine. Oh my gosh, I'm getting goosebumps. We shared this thing, and we sat outside. Her husband waited, and we just chatted for about 20 minutes. And she's like, I know, I was meant to meet you to get confirmation of what's going on. And we had this great conversation about the fact that Spirit's moving through each one of us, and it's about each of us listening to our own guidance. And she's like, oh, I got goosebumps again when you're talking. I got goosebumps again. And I thought, okay. So I let go of my concept of being physically fit by taking care of the stairs, and I made a great connection. And then she even went on, we were talking, and she goes right onto Amazon and bought my book. So she's like, look, I just blessed you. Okay, there you go. So I was like, cool. So that was a positive experience of letting go and listening. Anyone else have something they want to share that's coming to them right now? And it's not really positive. That's just me making it mean positive. Because if it turned out differently, it would still be positive, right?
Well, since you're in Mexico,
yes,
I have a Mexico story from years ago. And like a long time ago, like 25, 30 years ago. We went out, it was with my first wife and her dad. We went down to Mexico, and we're in a restaurant in Acapulco, and I had a raw oyster, and my whole body went, don't even eat it. Don't even eat it. I put it in my mouth. My body is just quivering. And I went, come on. And yeah, I swallowed it, and I paid the price. I had Montezuma's revenge for 3 weeks.
Oh my.
When I got home, I went to my doctor, and he said, oh, this'll knock it out. Didn't even touch it. Went back a week later, said, yeah, that didn't even affect it at all. And he goes, oh, this'll knock it out. Didn't even touch it. Another week goes by, and I go back, and he's like, oh boy, this thing really likes you, doesn't it? And he gave me something really strong, and I don't know if the bug just had enough or it was the medication. I have no idea which one it was, but it was finally over after 3 weeks. So it was like so clear, so loud, and I just overrode it because I wanted to eat a raw oyster.
And so, was there any ego in that, like male ego, that it even, or is it just that you wanted the raw oyster? It wasn't like, if there's an issue, I can handle it.
No, I never had that cross my mind. It was just sometimes we do dumb things, right? Yeah. And that I'm not going to beat around the bush. Like we make really poor choices, and that was definitely one where I paid dearly. So.
Yeah, I had one of those thoughts just before I got married.
And you didn't listen?
That would be right. That would be it. That's why I always.
How long was your recovery?
Oh yeah, it was like.
I feel much better about my 3 weeks.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I say that you got to have enough experiences where you don't listen, I think, in order to get perspective that it's not working when you're making your own choices, in that sense that spirit's got the whole picture kind of looking down and knows what's going to happen future, whatever. But yeah, that was a very clear indication. But that's why it would have been my rationale, my justification, all the people, whatever, this is it, da, 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 this is lifetime commitment. And the two people I consulted weren't very spiritual, and they already had their stories about marriage, and it was like a compromise. So it wasn't good going in, right? But yeah, so live and learn.
I was watching a program today, and the guy was talking about how, and I forget which way it goes, but maybe you guys can help me here, is one side of the brain is logical and the other side is creative, which is
the left is logical, the right is creative.
Yeah, so I was
so they say.
Yes. It's hard to be left-minded and still want to be right, because the logical always wants to be right and the left doesn't care about being right. And so and with the left side of the brain is kind of this more spiritual side. Actually, I can't even say that, because sometimes linear thinking is useful sometimes, just as much as out there floaty stuff is important sometimes too. I think the out there stuff is the feminine and the linear stuff is the masculine. Get a direction and the masculine wants to go in that direction. That's why you have to always revisit. It's like the cycle. Mm-hmm. When we get ideas spiritually, then we have to put them into this world.
Yeah.
So we go left, then we go right, then we go left, then we go right.
And then we are confused.
That happens too.
Well,
and it's a balance, and I don't think there's no one that actually has that balance figured out in a way that they could write it in the English language that would make sense, because everybody's unique in their own way. And you have to go and make all the left mistakes and all the right mistakes, and then all the mistakes when you're including them both. And then you get ready to build yourself as a human being after enough mistakes.
Well, I kind of see that in the political conversation going on, like in the US right now, because when I really go into each other's feeds, they're saying very similar things about what they want or what they're saying about the other side. And I kind of feel like it's someone once said to me that Turtle Island or North America was like the brain of the earth. And so then I looked at all the brain issues of learning disorders and things that go on, right? And we're predominantly one of the leading ones in that. And I was like, well, if we're a brain and Canada's part of the brain, no wonder we're so screwed up, because we've been playing with this, right? We've been, it's all combination poisons into the environment, which, our blood, blah, 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 blah. But that just made me think that the right and the left hemisphere, the masculine and the feminine, we can say, like, we're still looking at two sides, but ultimately spirit is both sides. So there isn't a side. We have to come into this unity concept that, as you just said, we need both. We can't just be one, right? Like, however it's going to work for us is going to work uniquely for each of us. And it's embracing all our parts. One of the comments I said to somebody that we were kind of debating about, I was saying, hey, giving a different perspective, like seems to me you're both saying the same things. And where's the solution oriented? Because we're all part of this. And someone said, are you picking sides? And I'm saying, no, I just I just know that we're all part of the whole body, and I wouldn't want my asshole to be the same as my heart. And she's like, oh, that's a good analogy then. So
Don't
like,
be just
yeah,
an asshole. That's a good metaphor.
yeah, just, right. Ah. And we could have something there. Montezuma's revenge. Joanne knows I've been having some digestive issues, so it could be all about the asshole on today's call. No, just
Well, and just even reflecting on, when I was saying, then you go left-handed, then you go right-handed, and you kind of go back and forth. I think enlightenment is something where it's spinning at a rate that you can't differentiate the two.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's moving at a fast enough pace where you can check in and take a step, check in and take a step. And it's not as clearly divided as me using my English right now, saying, check in and take a step. They're just so simultaneous and in balance that we're able to do that in one motion instead of two separate motions.
Yeah, and like I said to someone today, they're like, well, how come you're here for so long, right? And I could sort of feel this, well, let me give them a logical story. and that will fit for them. And I just said, because Spirit guided me, said, go here for 5 weeks. So I'm here. And then the woman goes, I get that. And I was surprised. So.
Well, I think there's a lot of that. There's a lot of people that I think 5 or 6 years ago would have never said spirit. Mm-hmm. And now they've been feeling stuff going on, and now they know there's something else.
Yeah. Something
beyond this realm. And even science is starting to get that now. I think in the next 10 years,
mm-hmm.
in the next 10 years, science will be completely rewritten. Math will be rewritten. Pharmacology and all that sort of related stuff we know is going to be definitely rewritten, and how we think of the world. Like, it is really true that what we're seeing and feeling and experiencing here is like less than a millionth of the reality of what's going on. And yet everyone wants to argue about that like tiny minuscule percentage of what's really going on.
Right. Yeah, I heard in a video Elon Musk was speaking, and so I don't know if it was really Elon Musk. It could have been AI speaking as Elon Musk or whatever, but it was, the character seemed to be Elon Musk. And one of the questions came to him was, people were wanting him to sort of, they were asking him like to kind of invest in them, or what would be the next thing. And he turns around and he goes, look, physics will give you answers, right? And he goes, study physics and you'll start to see how a lot of things work together. He goes, you're still not going to have the answers. He goes, but at least it might give you some clarity of what's actually going on in what's true, and why I've been able to do the things I've done, because I'm actually into the existence of what is already here in science. And for me, that was kind of like the aha, because I remember having a conversation with a science teacher that was teaching high school science. And I was asking him, I'm going, when are you going to start to teach the truth about science? And he goes, well, they'll learn it in university. And I go, well, how many kids take science in university? Right? Because he was saying, well, then they'll learn about quantum physics, then they'll learn about energy. They'll no longer just be the atom, because they were still teaching the nucleus is the center of the brain, right? And all of that has already been disproven. In the consciousness. And he's like, it's too hard to write all the textbooks all over again. And he's giving me all the reasons. And I think that's part of what's been, it's like we've been seeing for a lot of us, like over decades, this kind of like elastic band. There's many of us that have been walking away from traditional systems and wanting to shine a light and saying, hey, how come you haven't done it fast enough? Like, you know, Joanne doing her schooling at home and stuff like that with the kids. And then it's just, I think it's almost like we're going to have that elastic band is stretched and now it's beyond, it can't stretch anymore, right? Like it's just like the boomerang effect. And I'm going to say the boomerang versus the breaking of the elastic, and it's just going to propel us into this whole other world that we just let go of. But those that are still holding on, going, no, I just want to hold on to all my beliefs about the world, they're going to have to go like this and trust the process one way or the other.
I've had a lot of conversations. Well, I've had a few conversations with people where they're having that happen to themselves. Like there are people are dreaming. They're having dreams of things they're really pushing their buttons. We've talked about this too, and it's just been very interesting standing from my perspective and having my own experience with this and kind of going like, and how I have felt with the thought of letting things go. I've had a few people come up with sort of, this feels like I'm sidestepping from what we're talking about, but it's relevant in that a lot of people have been experiencing dreams on death and dying, and from my perspective is that it's that part of the self that's being shown to let go. And I've had my experience with that, and it was just like afterwards, when I had time to reflect on, I had a dream about people being washed away and like a tsunami. And it was like this big thing. And I was like, and the fear. And it was a very interesting dream. And the feeling was, you need to stay on top of this. And it was very much similarly, like we've talked before, it was very much am I going to succumb to my fear or fall back into that kind of being, or am I rising above that and letting go? Because what it came down to was ultimately having no control of anything. And with that was a lot of grief, interestingly enough. So I'm again sort of listening to you both talking and whatnot, and thinking about what Greg's saying, you know, the masculine, the feminine, and the right brain, the left brain, all these things, you know, and what's been coming up in my body, and that is I very much do feel that, like, even in saying, like, you know, the left brain and the right brain, and the masculine, the feminine, and this one is analytical and this one is creative. I grew up with that. You know, I'm a left-hander. I've been told that I'm soft and feminine and creative and whatnot, and yet I know through my experiences in my life to sort of more recently that I've been more choosing to be analytical and thought-based and not feeling-based as a self-preservation thing. So all of this listening has been really interesting, because when Greg was talking about, you know, like the masculine is very hard, like analytical and harder and this whatever, you know, what came up in me was I felt somewhat sad with that, because if someone who wasn't sort of aware of themselves or had some awareness in some kind, that can seem really a bit of a burden when you think about it, that the masculine is sort of like a negative, or it could be taken that way. Does that make sense? So when I feel into this now, I feel like I'm really looking forward to when it is all just one thing. There's no divide, even right down to the minuscule spiritual, whatever you want to call it, things. There always seems to be a divide or a separation from. And I'd really, really look forward to, and I really, really want there not to be a divide. So,
I get that, because this past like week or two, right, as I've been, looking back at me and why I'm noticing the so-called division in the US, because I haven't paid attention to American politics. Like it's just, who cares, right? Like, it's gone. And so I'm noticing that I'm noticing. And so in that I'm noticing there's the divide, right? I'm like, yet I'm talking a lot about unity. Why am I still noticing the divide? Right? So that's so I know, I go, okay, why is not the answer? It's like, I'm noticing the divide. So what is the divide telling me? The divide still is a sense of, for me, that there's like two opposing forces, and that's been a very well conditioned belief in me since beginning. Like, there's God and there's the devil, right? And so, I've said, hey, like, God made the devil or whatever, so Jesus won the kingdom, however it is. Like, I never felt like the devil had any power, yet I'm still noticing. And so it feels, so the first couple of days here, I off social media, whichever, and I could sense this more unified presence within me. And then I jumped back on, and I started to feel this rationalization, some justifications, some wanting to maybe add my words in there to try and enlighten someone or fix it or broaden the horizons, like, you know what I mean? That pattern. And I was like, okay, so that's the pattern that I still have, that there's something I can say, there's something I can do that's going to turn the key in someone else. And I'm like, that I have to let go of. I'm feeling very clear that Spirit's saying, let go of that. Like, truly surrender that everyone is part of source consciousness. Everyone. So it's like Greg posted in his Inner Fire group about, what if, I don't know exactly what the post is, but something I thought about, like, who would I be if I was just loving everybody? Was that what it was, Greg?
Well, yes, like if I really knew that the universe loved me, then how would I treat people, and how come I get to choose how and when to love certain people? So so for me to, on one hand, say, oh yes, the universe loves me, and then I turn around and say, yeah, but I love you a little less. You're easy to love, you're hard to love, but I still, like, we just break it all down into all these categories in our mind, and you don't deserve any love, and that whole, thing. So that I think the universe does love us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I just express that because that's just what I'm learning. So I can express that, and I see that in myself, and I see that in just about everybody that I've ever met. They have that same sort of thing. So
Yeah, because it's easy to say it, and it's easy to say I love the people that I love, right? Or that I'm supposed to love, even, or that align with me. And this idea to truly embrace the other, I think this is when I started to say, yeah, the asshole and the heart are still in my body, right? So can I embrace them for the job that they're doing? And I think that's, today it's been like a recalibration for me in the awareness that it isn't that everybody is playing their own unique role, and there are roles that totally would have pissed me off before, and maybe just minorly piss me off now, right? But that still trigger, and that sense of the pattern of wanting to make that other individual wrong, or that they need to be fixed. That's the pattern that I'm seeing for myself, that there's still something there, even though I like to go, I've made such great progress. It's still there. And so, as you said, to truly honor that we're all part of each other, and we're all going to love each other, we can still draw boundaries, right? There's still consequences. And I think that's where it gets a little kind of muddy water still for me, and I think for many other people, because maybe if we've been loving unconditionally before, it's like we're saying, I love you, and who cares if I'm a doormat, you step all over me, because I'll wake up tomorrow, it's a new day, and we're going to start all over again, right? Groundhog Day, I love you, it's all going to be fine. And there's nothing the individual is, I don't know, learning, or is that also a story? Maybe maybe that's part of the experiment, to be a doormat, because that's the experiment.
Yeah, that's always a good question. To me, it's like there's the highest spiritual principles that we could ever make up or tell a story about. And then there's still just life here on this planet. So like if we're talking about, oh, how does it feel to evolve so that you feel like your spirit is coming from the Orion's belt, or, the source of where I believe I'm from is Orion, the source of me, but I'm not living there. I'm living here. I mean, I'm living in this two-dimensional meat suit, and I have, feelings and senses and sight and smell and touch that's incredibly limiting, yet it can yield unlimited possibility, even though they're all limited. So like, I don't know. I don't know how that actually really works, because I think we still have to have some discernment, because if you go up to someone who's killed everyone they met and you walk up to them and say, hi, I just love you, you're dead. That's a very, very extreme case, but that's just to prove the point. So like if someone's just, rapes women over and over and over again, do you walk up and say, oh, I think we all should be nude? Like, what I mean? Like there's certain things that we just don't do. You can be as free as you want, I think, but there are some restrictions here in this world, and I don't know how far they go, or maybe that's just my story. I don't know, but I question that. Where's that line? Like, and can you even draw that line, or is it a very dynamic line that's always in motion and you can never really draw it? I think that's probably closer to the truth. So
Yeah, I would kind of feel it's got to be dynamic, because there are those stories that have been sort of handed down, right? About, love transforms the dark soul, whatever you want to call it, right? And that concept is and were they made up to keep us thinking, that we're more of a victim, in that sense of like, well, we'll keep working on it. I don't know. It feels like the letting go of a right and wrong, again, that concept, like right brain, left brain, right and wrong, and going, with the conversation of we're all points on a circle. And so if that individual that's, killing everybody, let's just say, right, is in the middle of the circle, and I think there needs to be the sense of uniformity of perception. And when the uniformity of all the points on the circle is perceiving it the same way, then that is the guideline. Like that is probably the rule. But if it's again, it's that conversation about you need a little order, right? Like I always like that when I hear people go, you need some rules because you need some order. And I'm like, so God really doesn't have order in the universe. Is that what we're saying? Right? It's just chaos, because in the chaos, there has to be some order. Yet my little brain
Yes.
hasn't grasped that concept, right?
That's our understanding of it. Like I know 30 years ago, we'd look at an ant nest, even scientists, and said it's chaos. And now when they look at it, it's the most organized thing they've ever seen in their life. So that's just the perception of the chaos, So is the chaos actually perfection in motion, and we are just not able to see it? Yeah. I'm starting to think that that's probably true.
I think so. That is honestly the only way I can rationalize all the things that go on, because there's always going to be, like, you just look at the whole world, right? And you've heard those people say, like, well, if there was really a God, then why does this happen, right? Why is this going on? Why is there war? Why is there famine if there's really God? And it's like, it's easy to say, oh, it's karma. It's part of the plan. It's part of the movie. But that still doesn't fulfill somebody that is feeling empty of, looking at the situation. And somewhere in there is the truth for each individual. Yet that's where I feel like it's an inside out job, right? Because I probably, if we were all vibrating, let's say, in that loving space that you're talking about, can you really love everybody? And then the guy in the middle was the guy that was killing everybody. He might just crumble, like dematerialize. He might just, we might see that, explode, like the evil lead, whatever, right? Like, that sense of, we don't know, because I don't think we've ever heard, like, I haven't had that experience. I think we're stepping into something more powerful than we truly know. Yeah. And that's where I started to look at Elon Musk and go, well, he's coming up with ideas that are beyond my comprehension, and he's implementing them as he sees guided to do. Yeah. And what I found, one of the things else he said the other day, which was interesting, because someone asked him about, well, you have Asperger's syndrome. Maybe you could help more kids with Asperger's. And he stopped and he goes, well, what do you think I could do? Because I do like to help. And you see something, and then he's like, but like, I have a son that is probably got a worse case than I do. And I would like him to be happier, right? I would like to have he feel more fulfilled, but he doesn't. So he goes, like, it was a sense of he can do all these things, and yet he was being honest that his own son, he's having challenges with, of how to connect and allow his son to feel better. And then he said, well, maybe, which I found interesting, he goes, when whatever the name of his robots are working, he goes, well, maybe that will change when everyone can have a robot as a friend, like R2-D2, and then they'll feel better. And there was a part of me when he said that, I was like, okay, that's a really sad state for humanity. If we need to have a robot that's going to be a friend or to comprehend or relate to a human. However, at the same token, I'm like, it could be like a dog, like dog's man's best friend.
This is already a lot of people's best friend.
You can call AI now, I heard. Yeah. You can call and it'll talk to you.
So to your point, well, to what we were talking about, like this highest spiritual principles, and then how does it cross over into this world? We could say, oh, well, let's just say that the Bible's true 100%, just as it sits, no, whatever. If everyone you knew jumped off the boat without a life jacket on in a storm, how many of them would calm the storm and walk on the water? Might be a couple. I'll say let's just give it a couple. The rest of us just drown. So it goes back to even what we're talking about with chaos. I think we only tend to see chaos because we're looking at it from this world out into the universe instead of the universe looking back at us. I know we talked about that the other day. I was watching some scientists talk about it, and they're looking out going, well, if there's intelligent life out there, how come they didn't come down here and take over? Because they were looking at it from the human point of view. All humans at some point wanted to take over the world. And I thought, well, you guys are really smart on one hand and really stupid on the other, because that's not even all humans' views besides that. But so I think as we learn, we look at stuff, I think, that used to be chaos, and it's not. It somehow moves it into a space of, some sort of understanding that I can't even put into words, that just looks at it and is not overwhelmed by the chaos. And you were talking earlier, Jacqueline, about wanting to fix someone and that sort of thing, and what if they're wrong or having to make them wrong? What if they are wrong? Or is that just something we make up? And I think they can be wrong on many levels, but it's not up to us to try to fix any of them. There's a difference. And that's just our view from where, I'll say my view from where I sit right now. If I look at somebody and say, well, that's wrong, and that's just my view, looking at the chaos, really saying, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I think, can I jump in just?
Please.
Sorry. What came to mind was like a little bit like saying like good and evil, is like, where does the line stop between good and evil? There is no line really. It's just we're trying to put a definition or a limit on what we choose individually of what is good or bad, and I think you kind of nailed it a little bit, because I think we sit here and we have these conversations and we're trying to put words to something that there are not words to explain what we're experiencing anyway, and it's not meant to be. Your experience is yours and mine is mine and Jacqueline's is Jacqueline's and whatnot. And I think that's where we like to get caught up in trying to explain to everyone else how it should be, pardon me, or how we think it should be. And it's just a perception. And we spend lifetimes doing that. And, when you're talking about why have aliens not come down and taken over the world? Because they're smart. Because they're friggin' smart and they know better. That's why.
Well, I can tell you last night, I was up in the middle of the hours and it's all black outside of the ocean. And I saw, I would say, something streaking across the sky, not like first like a shooting star or meteor, but something that I would fit in the description of an unidentified flying object. It was going very quickly. And it wasn't really lit up. It was like a shadow almost of an effect, right? It was kind of like an outline. It was interesting. And then I saw, probably, this is where I'm now, I saw something that I've been told is a shooting star or a comet or a meteor shower, right? A few of those things. Is it really? I don't know. I know that's what I've been taught, right? And so, and Orion's belt was really calling to me last night. I was watching it and really getting, the three parts of the belt, and then there's, the point in front of the middle and the point in the back, and those are the points. Like in Itza Itza, they line up with these other pyramids that aren't where the pyramids are. They're equidistant apart, and the magic of science that can do all that, without having any of the awareness, because we were just so undeveloped back then, right? So yeah, I saw this and I thought, again, the same sort of thing. It's like, there's so much more going on out there. And, it could be like that Third Rock for the Sun show when they were just laughing and they're just saying, like, these people, they're just so funny. Like, look at how they live. We just got to come down and get a feel for how hilarious their life is, how much they struggle and stress over all these things, because we don't have to. We do have that choice of changing our perception. So I think there's a lot going on, and I think there's a lot of people, whatever you want to call them, like, already here. We're just in this existence of this body, and we still think we're human. But are we really?
I was reading on some people's Facebook things, and they're talking about how, like, this is really the spiritual lesson, and we move on. And then someone commented, yeah, but it still hurts. And everybody jumped on that going, yeah, it hurts. Oh, I'm holding space for you. I'm loving you. We'll nurture you through this. And I'm going, you realize you're capitalizing on someone saying, I'm working on this. It shouldn't hurt me. And everyone's going, yes, it hurt you. Yes, it hurt you. And and they're reaffirming all the hurt and dragging the hurt on, making the person hang on to it longer and all this stuff. And I'm watching that going like, yeah, I can't comment on that. I'll just have a fight on my hands.
Well, I did make reference somewhere about something, and like to that analogy, like playing, we were supporting people playing victim. And the lovely term, right, comes back. Sounds to me like you're spiritual bypassing.
Yeah, what does that mean?
That means you're not recognizing that there's a human experience. You're just coming from the spiritual, from the perspective that it is an experience, but the human part is really suffering. And I have a difficulty with that, because it's like, if you're playing the movie role,
Oh,
woman that got.
Oh, there you are. There you are.
Yeah. So Jodie Foster played this role once in a movie where she was gang raped. Now, she played this role. That's not who she is. Right. And I think people get into this story of, well, that's who you are as a victim. That's who you are. And that's the human experience. And the spiritual bypassing has been a product of, we still have to honor the human experience. We have to honor the role you're playing and that you're suffering in this process. And I'm like, no, you do a good job. You did a great job acting. Like, I had someone reach out to me earlier today, and I just said, she's like, oh, I need help and blah, 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 blah. And I just listened to her message, and I asked a couple questions back to her. And I go, so you're actually doing just fine. You're just revisiting your habit of up and down. Right? Up and down. And she goes, yeah, I guess you're right. and done. But I could have, in the past, I probably would have spent hours going in, oh, how do we deal with this? Right? Oh, this is so hard. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Well, I've heard that term spiritual bypass used a lot in the last year, and I had no idea what it meant. So what are they saying? That you're bypassing spirit to put your scars and woes ahead of spirit? I don't know.
You're basically, the concept is you're failing to recognize that you're a human having a spiritual experience, right? So if you're suffering, and we need to honor that suffering and be with you in that suffering, and not say, oh, well, that's part of your experience. We can't look at it from the spiritual perspective only, because we're not allowing you to wallow in your misery.
Yeah. Okay. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I still am going to file it into things that I don't understand.
Yeah.
Right. And when those two ladies were over here the other day that I went over to that rock with, and they were back here, and the one lady says, well, while you're being worked on, I'm going to hold space. And I said, I don't believe in that, because what I'm hearing, I don't know if it's what you're saying, but what I'm hearing is, I'm going to hold you right with all your flaws, because it's like, you aren't good enough to hold your own space, so I'll hold it for you. Or like, I put that on the things that I don't understand too, because I said, as far as I know, you know, we can barely hold our own space most of the time. And like, do I really want someone who's, as if it's true that we're all humans having this painful experience, do I want any one of those people holding my space? I was like, no, don't touch my space.
I think she's misusing the term, because I think holding the space means, to me anyways, if we're doing one of our classes, with the ladies that I meet at 4:00 every day, if you're not there, she's going to go ahead and do the class anyways and hold the space for our group. That's if you're not actually present. But if the person's there, they don't need you to hold space for them. That doesn't make sense.
Well, I've heard that term used like at different places, like, and where they're all sitting there and going like, oh, while you're suffering, I'll hold space for you.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. It's you need to hold space when the person's not there, so that that you want them to be there with you, but they're not, so that you're holding space for them. But that, in that instance, you're right, that I would put that in, I don't comprehend that either, because that just makes no sense whatsoever.
Yes. Well, yeah, it's for me, it's just weird, because I just don't understand it. And I understand what people are thinking they're doing, but I'll add that to the list of things that I think they have no idea what they're saying or doing.
Yeah, it's like a new term and people are misusing it.
Well, because that's what good spiritual people do. They hold space.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of the spiritual conversation that is, from my perspective now over the years, is that we've just changed the other conversation and used different words.
Yes.
In the same process, so we can, like, you're striving to it, you need to be certified, all those things, so you can get it, you need to get to this point. And so they do coin phrases, right? Like one of those ones that people would say, well, the universe has got my back. And I'd be like, so what does that actually mean to you? And these phrases that people say, I go, because I don't care what it means to anybody else. Is like, what does it mean to you? If it means something positive for you or beneficial, then great. And so some people be like, well, that means the bad things are behind me. And I'd be like, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want any bad things behind me. Like, in that sense, right? I don't want to have something lurking behind me, or other people say, oh, that just means I'm always supported. Everything is always going to be good. And I think that's just the idea, is we say these things, we repeat these phrases. Ultimately, we don't know what they mean. And it's not just spiritual, it's in our whole existence of education. Like, we just are trained of how to speak until we learn differently. And then we're just going to give up words and we're just going to be, you got that right?
Well, I think, in a lot of the way that it's meant, of where I'm holding space for someone, where it's like you're holding them in this cherished position sort of thing. I think that's about as likely possible as, I'm going to go out and shine my light today on the world. and they're both, I think, arrogant, and that we think we can just go do that, and we can go shine our light in the world, but it happens after we do the work, and it happens automatically, and it's effortless. So when you're in that shiny place, which we've all had little visits of, then you are literally holding space for everything and everyone in that moment. And you're not sitting there going, I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to hold space right now. Because if you haven't done any of your work, the holding space is, it's like, you're taking a Picasso and throwing paint on it and going, isn't it better? Like it just doesn't, I don't know. And in my mind, they're both in the same of something that we're saying, and it's just not possible. It's just not possible. The only way that it's possible is, again, on those days where we all have that sweet spot in our heart and we are already shining, then you are holding space for everything in that moment. And every other time you say that outside of that moment is a lie. It's just like.
So can I ask a question just before you go on? So
Yeah.
Would that be, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I can feel my brain going like, I'm just going to go to sleep because I need to process this and I can't take it all in at the moment. But I'm hearing what you're saying. So,
Sorry about that.
No, it's good because I appreciate all of these conversations because it shows me where I'm holding a limit in some way, or there's something that I'm still learning, and that's good. Even if I don't get it, I just go like, well, that was interesting. I'll come back to that. So what I'm feeling, what you're saying is the difference is that it's the difference between being and doing. People, like you're saying, people are going, I'm going to go out and shine my light. They're doing it, whereas being is different. It is just like you say, when you're in that sweet spot, you don't have to think about it. It just is.
Yes.
Is that what you're meaning?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. I got it. Yeah.
That goes wild.
And the interesting thing is, when you're in that sweet spot and somebody needs to feel something, you don't have to say, I'm going to hold space for you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like you already are. You already are, and you don't even need the words for it.
Yes. I've heard this, like my experiences with myself and in relation to interacting with people, I find I'm very literal and very straightforward, and I do find that I find things very perplexing sometimes when I kind of think, what is this? Why is this? And it's like, what? I spend a lot of time kind of thinking like, the being part of me is sitting there going like, what are you doing the doing for, if that makes sense, and being aware of having these interactions with people and whatnot. And sometimes I feel that I come across quite blunt and quite harsh because I'm very literal, and I think I'm learning more that as I tune in more with myself, I'm learning that that's not a negative thing, because I've always taken that as a negative thing. My being and my spirit and my self is much more honest with me than I've allowed myself to listen to. So yeah, and thinking back on what you were saying in regards to suffering and whatnot, I've seen a lot of things and heard a lot where the suffering is our thinking of it. We hold on to the thought that, and it's like when you were talking before about, we have our stories of whatever's happened to us, to a greater or lesser degree of whatever horrible experience we might have had. It's just a chapter. It's not the end of the story. It doesn't stop there. There's series, there's books, kind of, if you want to put it in that in that way, and that's been a really good thing for me to have that viewpoint now, is that, you know, I was always stuck in my story and in my book and in my this is how it is, and I don't know how to get out of it, and it's really shitty experience. But now that I'm for myself, I'm much more direct and equally blunt with myself. I'm very honest with myself now, that even when I'm having these experiences that don't feel good, I will not make myself go like, oh, but you know, it's terrible, and I've got to stay stuck in this experience, and I've got to stay stuck in this thing. It's just like, well, that was crappy. I don't like that. Let's move on. And in all of this, I feel, and I'll throw it out there that, pardon me, other people may have this experience as well, because it's an adjustment for all of us, as you know, for the things that we let go of. It's new. I feel very, it feels very more. Pick a word. I've got a lot of words coming to my head. It feels very basic. I'm yeah, I can't, again, this comes back to, there's no words to explain something that's inside of you.
On one hand, it is very, very basic, and we make everything so complicated with our emotions and our thinking.
Yes.
Like, and so that's a good sign that you're thinking it's basic. That's really,
and I'm really finding good. That, yes. But I'm finding that my my experiences are the fine-tuning not being so basic and blunt to everyone else. Because not everyone wants to be basic. And I'm also aware that basic is not necessarily a good thing, because I've watched a program the other week, and it was like, you're just basic, and which was like a derogatory term, and it's like, well, you know, it's not.
There was a movie called Forrest Gump, and he was basic. And I think if we can get it to the keep it simple, sweetheart, starseed principle, we're all good. Maybe we can talk about that next week as we carry on these conversations with how spirit works in our lives.